Hey there, this is Joe Fox. Just wanted to put together a real quick video taking a look back at all of the cheap riders from the 2024 Tour de France fantasy game. There was a whole lot of debate, not just in my own head, but also in the Discord server that I run regarding what were the best cheap riders, the riders that are going to cost five, six, or seven stars. And, as we found out, due to the breakaway point change last year, these cheap riders had a huge, huge impact on the results of the fantasy league. And in fact, the several of the winners, including the winner of the overall global league, correctly selected three or four of these riders on their team from the very beginning, stage one. So it had a huge impact, and I wanted to just go back to my initial spreadsheet that I had made when I was trying to make my determination. So all of this information I put together prior to last year's tour. However, I just updated it with one column, which is to just go back and tie the loop, close the loop on how many points they actually ended up scoring in the fantasy league. So first, I just want to go to the bottom and look at the five cost riders because there really weren't that many. There were only a few, what's this, six to choose from, and four of them were classified as all rounders, one climber, one sprinter. I wasn't really considering Bram Welton because I didn't want to tie up a sprinter slot. I knew that there were certain points in the early and middle stages of the tour where I might want to have three big sprinters on my team. So I wasn't really considering Bram Welton. So Sebastian Grignard, I was considering. I don't really anticipate too many times when it will be optimal to have three or want to have more than three climbers on your team. So I didn't see that as a drawback. And in fact, in this year's tour, it might be an advantage to have one of your cheap riders be a climber because that frees you up to have five other all-rounders on your team, which I think actually might be a limitation this year with both Wout van Aert and Mathieu van der Poel being classified as all-rounders and looking pretty good. And there's a few other sprinters who are classified as all-rounders. I was a little bit concerned with Alexis Renard and Nikias Arndt being the lead out men for their respective sprinters, but given that these are not the huge, big sprinters that demand a massive train, you never know. They still might have the freedom to go into a breakaway, even if there's some likelihood of a bunch sprint behind. But as it turns out, none of these guys had a real huge breakout tour. Bram Welton scored 114 points. Nikias Arndt was the best of the six with 155 points, but not too much. Now, if we go up to the six cost riders, there were a couple that really stood out. And in particular, I'm talking Matteo Verchet and Nelson Oliveira. If you were lucky enough to pick these guys up, you would have ended up quite happy. I was considering Nelson Oliveira. I didn't end up picking him up in the end because I was really priced at either seven or five. I didn't see an advantage to picking up a six cost rider. If I did pick up a six cost rider, I might have picked up Nelson Oliveira. But for me, it was either spend those extra 2 points on a seven cost rider, in which case I was definitely picking up Jonas Abrahamsen, or save all of my extra stars in reserve and go for two five cost riders, which is what I did. Also worth noting, I thought that Gachenard might be good, but to be honest, I had never even really heard of this guy before, and the only reason I was looking into him was because Benji Nyssen from the LRCP said that he expected him to be in the break every day. So I just took that as a reason to at least look into it. And he is in the top, what's this, top 400 on PCS. Now, if we go up to seven, here's where I'm glad to say that I was completely correct when I said that Jonas Abrahamsen was the most undercosted rider in the entire fantasy game. And we can see that he scored 2,227, which puts him in the top 10, I think maybe even top five possibly. I think he was like seventh overall in terms of points scored, but far and away the leader in points per cost. If you take those points and divide by the star cost, he was more than double what Tadej Pogacar was worth. So he was clearly a breakout star. And this year it's a little bit less clear whether he's a good pickup because, first of all, he's costed higher at 10 stars, but also he just broke his collarbone like 9 days ago. So That's a little bit concerning. I might still pick him up though. I have a lot of faith in this guy. The other person I want to call out is Frank Vandenbroek. He had a really, really great stage one. He was in the break all day, and then he helped his teammate Roman Bardet win the stage, coming in second. So he scored a ton of points on stage one. And then because of how the jersey points work, he was high up in all of the points, polka dot, white jersey, yellow jersey for a number of stages after that. And he ended up capitalizing in the fantasy game off that early success. He went in a couple more breaks and had some success, but he was largely front loaded in terms of his real results in the tour, but still it produced 1,125 points. So Frank Vandenbroek and Jonas Abrahamsen, not only were they the two clear best 7-star riders, but they were the riders that were picked up for stage one on almost all of the winners in the final stages of the fantasy game. Everyone who's in the top 10, 20, they correctly guessed Frank and Jonas were good picks ahead of stage one. And it paid off, which, good for them, but it also makes me think a little bit, it makes me question the design of the game when, in order to win at the end of a 21 stage tour, uh, all of the people that are in contention for the win guessed correctly ahead of stage one as to which cheap riders to pick up. That doesn't really sit well with me. But in any case, that's how it panned out. Also, shout out to Julian Bernard, who the winner of the Global League had on his team for quite a while. So that was also a good pick. He scored 707 points. Javier Romo, also, I had him on my team for a little bit. A lot of people picked him up later stages of the tour because he's young enough to be eligible for the white jersey, and he was also in a lot of breaks, picking up a lot of points on the hillier stages, the mountain stages. So he did quite well as well. So that's all I really have to say here. I'm not going to go through every line of this spreadsheet, but it's nice to sort of close the loop on the deep analysis that we did ahead of last year's Tour de France, specifically on the cheap riders. If you'd like to see something like this for the 2025 tour, I'm putting together a similar spreadsheet that'll be shared in my Discord server sometime in the next couple days. Make sure to take a look at that before the rosters get locked in Saturday morning. All right, I'll call it there. Keep this video short and sweet. Stay tuned for more. Thanks.